Welcome, everyone. We are glad you are here today. We're going to give this a couple minutes before we get started, just to make sure everybody has a chance to join us for the LoanSTAR and Texas PACE Economic Opportunity webinar for Rio Grande Council of Governments Communities. Thanks for being here. While we wait for people to join us, I'll do a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions, and we hope you do, please put them in the chat box or the Q&A box, and we will be monitoring those as we go along. And we will also address questions at the end of the presentation. Let's go ahead and get started. My name is Charlene Heidinger. I'm the president of the Texas PACE Authority. We operate PACE programs across the country as a nonprofit. We do this as a public service, and we are delighted to have this opportunity to introduce our program to you today. And you're also going to learn about the State Energy Conservation Office's LoanSTAR Revolving Fund program too. We hope you'll be able to take advantage of these. All right, let's see. Here we go. First, I'd like to introduce you to Annette Gutierrez, the Executive Director of the Rio Grande Council of Governments. Annette has held this position since 2009. She's been with the Council of Governments for 20 years as of this year. So congratulations, Annette. She served as Regional Services Director, Regional Services Manager, and Economic Development Coordinator. The Rio Grande Council of Governments represents Brewster, Culberson, El Paso, Hudspeth, Jeff Davis, Presidio counties in Texas, and also Dona Ana County in New Mexico. I didn't realize councils of government cross state lines. That's really interesting to learn. Annette's goal has always been to serve in a leadership position that advises elected officials on policy issues, provides efficient delivery of services to public organizations, and establish partnership with local, state, and federal agencies, universities, and nonprofits. She is in the perfect position to do that in West Texas. Annette, thanks for being here today. I will advance slides for you. And so if you want to take a minute to talk a little bit about the RGCOG, that'd be awesome.
All right, well, thank you so much, Charlene, and thank you again for giving us this opportunity to speak with you today. I know that many of you are aware of the Rio Grande Council of Governments, but for those of you who are not, I'll just briefly give you an account of who we are and what we do. As you can see here on this slide, in Texas, we have many counties. There are 254 counties throughout the state. And so when we look at state agencies and their ability to pass through funds from the federal government and administer programs on their behalf, it could be a challenge. And so in the early 60s, state of Texas governor's office, they did establish these regions. There's 24 of them. And in each of these regions, you will find a council of government. And so our purpose really is to work with our local communities, identify local partnerships, collaborations, and then also provide greater efficiencies in terms of pushing out programs on behalf of the state where the funding is originating on the federal side. And so as you can see here on this map as well, we do cover these 6 counties in far west Texas, as Charlene mentioned, but we also have Dona Ana County as a member government of ours, and they joined in 1987. In addition to Dona Ana, we do have Las Cruces as well. And although we're not able to provide direct funding to them, since our funding comes from the state of Texas, the local elected officials do see great opportunities for networking and collaboration on a regional level when we do have our board of directors meetings or other functions as well. And so We also wanted to point out that we are a political subdivision. We're recognized as one through the local government code. And so we do not have taxing authority, and we are also not a nonprofit. And so I think it's really important to highlight those two items because oftentimes people do make those assumptions that we have the ability to do either one. And so we are a local government. We work with other governments, and our whole purpose is to ensure that we are supporting all of you in making the quality of life that much better for your residents. Okay, so I'll go to the next slide. And so today, what I want to talk to you about just briefly, because it's on the horizon, and I want everyone to start thinking about this in terms of possible projects. The Economic Development Administration is a federal agency under the U.S. Department of Commerce. They are a funding agency to the Council of Governments. We have an Economic Development District that is funded through their agency, and they will be receiving additional funds from the American Rescue Act that I want you all to be aware of. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. And so briefly, mission of EDA, it's that to lead the federal economic development agenda by promoting innovation and competitiveness, as well as preparing and supporting American regions for growth and success in the global economy. And so here are some of the ways that they're able to execute that mission. And so you'll see here that one of the things that I really do want to highlight is their funding is often used as seed money for an investment. And so if you all are looking at putting together a project and you've got various pots of money where you can where you're putting that together, perhaps the EDA can come in and help fill that gap to start this program. It's not used to, the funding was not going to be used where you're going to be receiving funding from this agency on a continual basis. It's just to start the process, and then hopefully you will be able to prosper and add opportunities to your region where you're providing high paying jobs and jobs that are sustainable. Next slide, please. And then also in terms of the investments that they make, I do want to highlight again, in terms of the funding that they make available, these are the entities that they make funding available to. So it's going to be your state and local governments, tribal organizations, universities, and nonprofits as well. And they really do want to focus in on economically distressed communities. And in our 7-county region, most of our areas will qualify in that regard in terms of the economic distress. Also, what's very important to note is that the funding that they make available is not for it's not for private or for-profit companies, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't think of them. So one thing that one example that's often used is you all have an industrial park. You want to attract businesses to lease out of your facility, but you need to update your water infrastructure, your wastewater. You need to provide better roads. That's where the EDA investment can come into your community, where they can provide funding for those initiatives. And so it's still going to benefit the private companies, but it not benefit them directly. And oftentimes the match that they require can go up to 50%. In our area, we hover or average around 20 to 30% match. And so that's something else to think about. And then finally, all of the grants that they will make available, the whole purpose of those grants is to create or retain private sector jobs and increase your private investment. So those are things for you to think about as you're looking at potential projects. Next slide. One program that they do offer is the Economic Adjustment Assistance Program. And so these are some of the items that they will fund you for. Strategic planning is one of them. If you need a technical assistance provider to assist in an initiative that you're undergoing, as well as capitalization of revolving loan funds. And so again, these for the most part will require that 80% grant rate match. Next slide. And here is an example of what they were able to do with the CARES money. And so even though the American Rescue Act is not ready yet, we don't have a NOFA on that. This here is a good example to let you know what they were able to do with the previous funds. So these are the monies that were passed in March of 2020, and EDA was allocated 1.5 billion for the pandemic. And that 1.5 was for the entire nation. within our region for EDA, we do have the Austin Regional Office that covers our area. They did receive 236 million of that 1.5 billion. And so the requirements that they placed on these awards was that you needed to complete these awards in a 2-year process. And the Austin Regional Office, with that 236 million, they were able to disperse all of those funds within 6 months. So it happens really, really quickly in terms of them having that NOFA out and people, entities submitting their applications for review and approval. And again, the applications, they have to address job creation, retention, and then the impacts of the disaster directly, which is obviously the pandemic during this time. Next slide. And the other thing that they were able to do was with the CARES funding, they did make some funding available to economic development districts, university centers, and the revolving loan funds. We are, like I said, a planning district, and so we were able to receive additional funds through these efforts where we were able to hire 2 additional staff to assist with the pandemic. And so many of you have had the opportunity to meet with Peggy O'Brien, who is our local governments manager out in Marfa. And then here in El Paso, we have Charles Simeon, who's our coordinator for the El Paso effort. So hopefully you'll have an opportunity to meet with them and talk more about EDA as this funding becomes available. Next slide. And so here we are with the American Rescue Act. Again, we don't know when this is going to be coming out. We're hoping that the NOFA will be published within 4 to 6 weeks. Right now, it's still being drafted, but it does need to be approved by Department of Commerce as well as the OMB. And this time around, they're receiving more funding than they did under the CARES program. So that's something, again, to think about. We're looking at projects. If you have construction projects, that's definitely something that you would want to think about. If there's a project that you need for seed money in terms of something along the lines of economic adjustment, where you're looking at establishing a program, an institution to help other businesses, that's something else that they can do as well. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see what area Austin Regional Office covers. So when they receive their funds, it's going to be a competitive grant process where the state of Texas is competing with the rest of these states. We have New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Now, if you all are interested in talking about this possibility further, we are going to be, we have already started these efforts where we are going to do a matchmaker series, so to speak, speed dating with Robert Pichet, who's our economic development representative from EDA. And we will give you an opportunity to talk with Robert, introduce yourself, summarize your project, and he can give you some ideas whether you're on the right path or not. And we would like to do these as soon as possible, because that way you can get some feedback in terms of your potential projects. But obviously, if there is, with the NOFO coming out and we get some more specifics about how the application process is going to be conducted, we can then schedule an additional meeting with you and Mr. Pichet, because Robert is representing our region in Austin with these applications. He then will submit them to the scoring committee and the reviewing committee. And so he's going to be our best representative at the regional office to get your project approved. And so I hope that you all will take us up on that offer. We're really excited about these possibilities. And one additional note, broadband is going to be high on their list of priorities. And so that's something for you all to think about as well. So that concludes my presentation in terms of some possible funding that I want to make you aware of. And I know that you all hopefully do know Peggy, have her contact number. We'll make sure that when we get a list of the registrants, we'll provide you with Charles, his information as well. And I hope that you all enjoy this session. It's really great information. We really hope that there's going to be some possibilities that come out of these programs. And just know that any decision that you make in terms of engaging in either one of these projects, the Council of Governments is here to assist, and we will help support you in any way that we can. So thank you so much, Charlene.
Thank you, Annette. And before we move on, I don't see any questions in the question or chat section yet, but if you have questions for Annette, please put them in there and we will address them at the end of the program. Our next speaker is going to talk about economic development opportunities provided by the State Energy Conservation Office, which is part of the Texas Comptroller's Office. It is served by its director, Eddie Trevino, who's with us today. Through energy efficiency, SECO helps public entities improve working and learning environments. And after Eddie's presentation, I'm going to speak about a similar program for the private sector. Under Mr. Trevino's management, the LoanSTAR Revolving Loan Program, it's a fund, its value has increased to $230 million. It's resulted in over 325 loans. It has no loan default, and that is since it became a demo project in 1989. So that is a long demonstration of success. Eddie's professional designations include the fact that he is a registered professional engineer and a certified energy manager. Eddie has 29 years of engineering and management experience. Eddie, we're so glad you could join us today. And you might be muted.
There we go.
Thanks.
This morning, we're going to talk about the LoanSTAR program. And Charlene, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to talk about a program I'm very proud of and very proud to be a part of as well. Our LoanSTAR program, as you can see in the slide, our audience are public entities. This includes the K-12 schools, local and county governments, public higher education universities, as well as state agencies. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I'm going to give you some background on our current notice of loan fund availability, or NOLFA, which is open for business right now, and it closes August 31st of this year. Each year, what we do is we issue a NOLFA. They open probably around the middle of October, and then they extend to the following August 31st, which is the end of our fiscal year. And it's a first come, first served process. Our loans, our maximum loan size per application is $8 million. And you can see that an applicant can actually submit for up to 3 loans in an application period. So there's availability of up to $24 million of energy efficiency retrofits on a particular project for those public entities. We have specific requirements. The major ones are that the simple payback for a project has to be less than or equal to 15 years for the overall project. In addition, each measure of that project has to pay for itself in less time than the estimated useful life of that measure. And what that means is if you break apart a project, every aspect of the project makes economic sense because it will pay for itself before that measure has exhausted its useful life. Right now, on our interest rates in our general loan fund, it's a 2% interest, which is pretty competitive. And we also have a bucket of money from ARA, which was the 2009 Recovery Act. And interest rate for that bucket of money is at 1%. So like I said before, applications are reviewed on a first come, first served basis. And so it doesn't matter what size the project is. We've had projects as large as 8 million and as small as $100,000. And so as long as you're in the queue, the size of the project doesn't matter and doesn't impact our process in getting to you. And as you see, our open enrollment closes August 31st of this year. Next. Now, as a general guide, you can find information on our LoanSTAR program in the government code as well as the administrative code. One of the loan qualification criterion is pretty simple. The measure that's proposed for a particular project has to be permanently affixed to that particular project and to that building. And you have to own and occupy the building where the proposed measures take place. So it's pretty simple. All of our loans have third-party reviews, and we're intimately involved in the loans from a third-party perspective because that protects our interest. And by protecting our interest, it protects your interest as well as a borrower. What you see in front of you right now is a loan recap. This is over the history of our LoanSTAR program. You can see that we've loaned out over $500 million in loans, and you can see the distribution of who receives loans. And you can see also that K-12 schools and local governments are major beneficiaries of the loan program and major participants of the program as well. To date, we've saved $647 million in utility savings over the life of the program. Next slide. This is our process. On the blue, that's our application process. The green outline, that's what happens during construction. In our application process, you'll submit an application. We've got a prescribed format for an online application. Then you'll prepare a utility assessment report. What that means, it's an investment grade audit on the proposed project. It describes the measures, how much it'll cost to implement the measures, how long it'll take to complete the project. We have a prescribed process so that all of our utility assessment reports look the same and makes it a lot easier to review and a lot easier to implement as well. Like I said before, we have third-party reviewers. Those are professional service companies that we have under contract. They will review that utility assessment report. They'll visit the site and check all of the on-site conditions and verify that what's proposed to be done can be done, and it is in compliance with our LoanSTAR technical guideline requirements. Once they review the project and they deem it to comply with our guideline requirements, at that point, they'll submit an approval letter to us. And what we will do is prepare a loan agreement. All of our loan agreements are reimbursement-based loan agreements. And what that means is that you incur the cost and then you file a reimbursement request for us to pay you so that you can pay your contractor for the work that's completed. You can see again, our third-party reviewers are heavily involved in the design process. They'll go out to the site twice during construction, once at 50% completion and the second time when the project is 100% complete. And the second time, what they're checking is to make sure that everything is operating as intended, that you, the borrower, receives all of your warranty information, and that the project definitely complied with what you said it would do in that utility assessment report. Now, once we get there, 100% compliance and final report, at that point, we'll send you a loan repayment schedule. In the utility assessment report, you have a simple payback for the loan that's calculated. That is the loan term for the loan repayment schedule. All of our loans are repaid on a quarterly basis on state quarters. We have no prepayment penalties, so that if you have extra savings or want to pay off the loan early, you're more than welcome to do that. Next.
Eddie, before we move on, can I ask you about the engineering resources that Ceco can make available?
We have engineers, two types of engineers. One, we have the engineers that are dedicated to our LoanSTAR program. These are the third-party engineers that I referenced. We have another program that's called Local Government Technical Assistance. If you have other issues or other areas where you need engineering technical assistance and don't have expertise in those particular areas, you can submit a technical assistance request to our office, and we'll send out some engineers to help you out in those projects. Now, they won't, on the LoanSTAR program, they won't do your work for you because they're protecting our interests. but on the technical assistance, they're available to help you with specific needs. Or if you want to do a preliminary energy assessment on your facility to identify projects within your facility or facilities, we can send them down to do preliminary energy assessments as well.
Thanks.
This is where you can find us. If you'll see our webpage address, and if you're looking for information on the current notice of loan fund availability that we have out right now that I described earlier, you'll click on that box that says SECO funding opportunities. And when you click on that box, it'll take you to the next slide. What you'll see is a description of our current NOFA, and you'll see the open enrollment deadline as well. One of the things that I want to highlight in this particular slide is that sign up hyperlink. If you sign up in that hyperlink, what it does is that it enables you to receive notification for any funding opportunities, whether it's a grant funding opportunity or a loan funding opportunity. You get all of those notifications. So it's worth your time to sign up. And this way, you don't have to check our website. You'll get notices whenever that takes place. When you click on that hyperlink on the previous page, it'll take you specifically to this NOFA. And on that NOFA, you'll see that we've got a PDF where you fill out for the application. And we've also got an application information packet available. The application information packet goes in more detail than what I just described to you about the loan program, about the process that we use, what are acceptable measures. So you definitely want to read that application information packet as well if you're interested. And you'll see another hyperlink that says submit loan application. All of our loan applications are submitted electronically now, and that's the hyperlink you'll use to submit your loan application and to upload your application itself. There's one other program I wanted to make sure that you knew about. We just released a different NOFA, and it's called Cool Schools and More. This NOFA is targeting public school districts, and it's an HVAC retrofit program. If you have, if a district has units that are 12 years or older and wants to replace them, this is a super low interest rate program. It's 0.25% interest rate. The loan payback is predefined at 12 years. In addition, as part of that program, we are allowing up to 20% of the HVAC retrofit cost. So let's say that you have $100,000 of retrofits, then you could take $20,000, which is 20% of that HVAC install cost, and use that for air treatment for the schools. And so it's a great opportunity to improve air quality in the schools. And so at that point, what you would have is a loan for $120,000. So the maximum loan size on this particular program is $500,000. It's a great opportunity. It's super low interest rates, and it's something you should consider. And if you go to our loan funding, our funding opportunities webpage, you'll see a separate hyperlink to that Cool Schools and More program. That's my presentation, Charlene.
Thank you so much, Eddie. I see a question here. I'm just going to check it a moment. Are municipal utilities eligible for SECO funding like the LoanSTAR program?
So what you have to, a municipal utility district is a quasi, I believe they're a quasi-governmental entity. I'd have to check into that and get back with you on that. I am not sure. It just depends on how they're categorized in statute, because our limitation is to provide loans for public facilities. So I can be happy to look into that definition.
Thanks. My name is Charlene Heidinger. I'm the president of the Texas PACE Authority. In 2013, the Texas legislature passed the Texas PACE Act, and it created for the private sector long-term financing similar to the SECO LoanSTAR program. This is not a revolving fund. The beauty of this program is that it provides local governments with a lot of economic and environmental benefits, but the local governments are not the providers of the funding for these projects in the private sector, and it does not cost the local government any taxpayer dollars. So let's talk about the problem that we're trying to fix. Energy efficiency and water conserving equipment, along with equipment that allows a business or nonprofit to create power on site, that equipment's expensive. The extra challenge is that it takes a long time. The return on investment is many years before most of this equipment will break even with energy or water savings. And as a result, it's a challenge for businesses to invest in equipment that makes the property more energy and water efficient. As a result, we have deferred maintenance all over the country, and we have businesses that have their capital and part of their profits going to paying utilities when they'd rather have that money so that they could hire more people and put that money back into the core business. So here's the issue. Finally, the HVAC system is dead. Can't get parts anymore. It's not working very well. And so there's a lot of money made on maintenance. It's held together with duct tape. And at some point, it finally needs to be replaced. And the HVAC provider has come into this company several times and said, look, instead of having me repair this one more time, why don't we just replace it? Look at all the energy savings that you're going to experience. But here's the problem. This is what the owner sees. Banks have trouble making equipment loans like this because they don't know how long the company is going to be in business. They don't know how long the company is going to own that building. And they can't come and take the HVAC system if the owner of the building doesn't repay that loan. So to control risk, lenders want to be repaid for these types of equipment loans in 5 years or less. And what that means is that the property owner has a big cash flow problem for the first 5 years before they can reach those savings. So what the PACE program does in the communities where a county or a city has established the program, that has to happen first, but where that happens, the lender's risk is reduced by the PACE program because instead of having the HVAC system be the collateral becomes a senior lien on the property for the cost of the HVAC system. And so what we end up with is a local government assessment over the life of the equipment that is a standard payment. And like the SECO LoanSTAR program, these projects will not qualify unless an independent third-party engineer validates that over the life of the assessment loan, the savings will exceed the cost. So this is done with a local government assessment placed on the private property. This is a voluntary assessment. And what that does is because the payments are lower over a longer period of time, the owner of the property, a business or a nonprofit, has immediate access to the savings, the utility and repair savings, so that they can use those savings to repay the loan. Assessments on property, governmental assessments on property, which is what this is, do not accelerate. So if the owner wants to sell the property in year 6, the owner will have paid the assessments 1 through 6, and the new owner buys the property with the obligation to make the remaining payments. So there are a lot of benefits and securities that come with this loan. We believe this is a wonderful product for local lenders to make available to their really good customers. It's a different kind of underwriting because what we're doing here is we are underwriting the savings to the property as opposed to the profits of the company. So it's a little bit different than what most local lenders are used to doing, but it is a creative solution to a very real problem. And it won't work on every property or with every customer, but it's a wonderful tool to add to the lending toolbox. We know that local lenders are not used to making long-term loans. We are working on establishing a secondary market so local lenders won't have to hold these for 20 years. That is actually starting to happen. The ultimate purchasers of this type of very secure loan is a life insurance company or a pension fund. One other thing to mention for local lenders who are participating today is that because this is a senior governmental lien on the property, the project will not qualify until the mortgage lender provides written consent. And why would they do that? The collateral is receiving a much needed improvement. Because these must be cash flow positive, the mortgage holder, or the property with the mortgage, those owners are going to be in a better position to pay their mortgage. And then finally, these loans don't accelerate. So the only thing that can be collected ahead of the mortgage by the local government on behalf of the PACE lender is the missing payment, not the entire assessment, because it doesn't accelerate. So we are working with local lenders, and I would love to answer any questions that you might have about the program. Our hope is that banks begin to offer this program, because if you also are the mortgage holder, it doesn't really matter if you're senior to yourself. But we are finding an increasing comfort level with this program with local banks as they get used to it because of the benefits to the bank or the local lender, the credit union, et cetera, as well as the customer. So let's talk a minute about what this is. Let's dig down a little bit. Property assessed clean energy, that's where we get PACE. It's private financing, but the whole idea is to overcome the cash flow problems that are preventing businesses from being able to maintain their property in the most energy and water efficient manner. So this is long-term, low cost, 100% upfront financing. It can only be used on the measures that create energy efficiency, save water, or create power on site. So an obvious example of that is solar. We see hospitals, schools, and manufacturers, industrials use this for combined heat and power projects. There are lots of ways to create power on site. And when we're thinking about that, keep in mind that a lot of these projects have ancillary benefits. They make the facilities more resilient to storms. They allow properties to control their power use, even if they lose access to the grid. And then finally, a lot of energy efficiency and water efficiency measures like self-flush low flow toilets, lights that are on sensors, those types of projects also protect people in terms of clean air and COVID. The kinds of lighting that can be added to the inside of an HVAC system to kill the bacteria, et cetera, that clog up a filter and make that system less efficient. That's also very possible that can kill the COVID virus as well. So there are ancillary benefits that we hope you will look at. The only properties that are eligible under the Texas law are commercial properties, that includes nonprofits, industrial properties, and that includes agriculture, and then the multifamily properties with at least 5 units. So these would be apartment complexes are the best example of that. So how does this work? The financing installments are paid via a special governmental property assessment over the useful life of the improvements. So the statute was state authorized. We call this a local adoption model because local governments have the authority, counties and cities have the authority to create this program if they so choose. And Texas PACE Authority is a 501c3 nonprofit that administers these as a public service. This is a voluntary program. And when I say open market, what I mean is the property owner can work with any lender of their choice. Okay, so let me give you an example of this. The building on the left is the Barfield building in downtown Amarillo. It has been in this sorry state for 25 years. It's a historic building, was built in 1926. It's on Route 66. It was built the year Route 66 went through Amarillo. So it's got a wonderful history. But for years, developers have looked at this property. They tried to turn it into condos. They kept trying to come back and bring this property back to life, but it was just simply too expensive. So what happens is these properties lay fallow and local communities have to look at this eyesore, but they also don't have these buildings on the tax rolls, right? And they're just sitting there and they're a real drag on the neighborhoods around them, the streets around them. When someone goes to renovate a building with this needed equipment, they have to get the capital. They have to put a capital stack together, and they usually come up short. And so they have a choice. Do we borrow very expensive mezzanine funding to pay for this? Or do we, what is a terrible term, do we design this to be a less expensive building? So if you're going to, they call it value engineering, and what they mean is we're going to redo this to make it cheaper to get it done. But the problem is that the way to do that is to reduce the cost on the things that people don't see, to remove all the energy and water efficient measures and focus on what people see. And what that does is condemn that building and everybody in it to higher energy and water costs going forward. Well, that hurts local communities too, because that's energy and water that could be freed up for other folks moving into the area and save local governments and local utilities from having to go buy more water or buy more power from someplace else. The cheapest water and power we have is the water and power we already have. So PACE provides an opportunity to be more efficient and free those resources up for the local community. The other thing that happens when you take an old building like this and bring it back to life is it becomes a place for permanent jobs. We track the energy, the clean energy jobs that are created. Somebody has to create this equipment, somebody has to deliver it, somebody has to install it, somebody's got to feed those folks, somebody's got to maintain this equipment. But in this case, this project also created 55 permanent hotel jobs when this repurposed building opens as a Marriott Autograph Hotel. So while I've been talking, you probably had a chance to see that this project also received $9 million in historic tax credits. And you'll see the annual savings, which are significant for this building. And this is what we're seeing across the board. And this is why we're so excited about what this program can do for communities. But the other thing I wanted to point out is that PACE complements all the other incentives that are out there. So if you have access to historic tax credits, if you have access to facade grants, utility incentives, new market tax credits, opportunity zones, all of those things have been married with PACE in Texas so far. So let me look at this another way. I'm a visual person, so this is another thing that we're trying to do. So if you look at the conventional funding on the left, that graph, you'll see that there's a repayment tower. That's the 5 years of repaying in a traditional equipment loan for this type of equipment improvements. And so why call it the tower of pain, right? You've got to get over that before you can access the utility savings that are going to increase your net operating income. What PACE does is knock that tower over. You still have to pay for the equipment, but now you have access to the utility savings from the beginning so that you don't have to pull money out of your core business in order to make these building improvements. That's really the secret of what PACE is doing. All right, another example. This was our first office building in Houston. This building is owned by folks in Europe. It was a cash cow for them. The property manager was really in distress because the tenants were complaining the air conditioning was completely unreliable, and yet the owners didn't want to limit their cash by investing in the building that they already own. And so the property manager told them about PACE, and they realized that they could use someone else's money and be cash flow positive at the same time and protect their investment. So the blue line in this graph is the PACE cash flow. You'll see that it was cash flow immediately positive. Had they borrowed money, from a traditional 5-year loan, that's the orange line. And when you add the interest, it makes the return on investment even longer. So the traditional lending opportunity wouldn't have broken even until almost 10 years. Had they paid for the $1.3 million that this project cost upfront using the capital of the company, it would have taken them almost 9 years to break even. And that is just a long time to pull that much money out of a core business. And you'll see that in this project, they accessed $30,000 in local utility incentives. All right, so let's talk about the PACE program. It has been active since 2015. So we just celebrated our 5th anniversary. You can see lots of different types of property owners have taken advantage of this. We're excited about an increased interest in the industrial sector as well. And then you'll see on the right that the Texas, so the first program was established in 2015. About $6 million in PACE loans were made in 2016, and it's just continued to increase. And even during COVID, we had a healthy dollar amount of PACE investment. But what was exciting to us is that we actually closed more projects last year despite COVID than in any previous year. They were smaller projects, but a healthy number of projects across the country. Across the state, excuse me. And then you'll see there's a pretty good breakout of measures. 55% energy efficiency, 30% water conservation, and 12% distributed generation. The vast majority of that is solar. We hope to see that increase over time. We expect that that will in the commercial sector. But the program is growing, and we would love to work with you to make sure that this is available throughout the Rio Grande Council of Governments. To date, El Paso County is the one local jurisdiction in the COG that has the program. This is where we serve today. There are 56 local governments. The city of Freeport was the most recent addition. We are proud to serve all these local governments, and we hope to, and you'll see it's kind of across the state now, and we hope to grow in your area as well. Each of these local governments has their own web page on our page, and for those that have projects that have closed, we track those, the job impact, the ozone impact, water, energy, and natural gas savings as well. So each community, oh, and then the dollar investment in those communities. So each community can see and share the benefits to the entire community as well as the property owner. In Texas, we spent a year up front before the program was launched. We had 130 volunteers break into 5 different working groups. And one of the key elements of the Texas PACE program, which has really been copied in many other states, is that we separated the government's role and minimized it to only those elements that a government needs to participate in order to make the program work. And so that white line between the two sets of arrows is really a firewall. And all of the power is in the hands of the property owner. So the property owner can use any contractor. They select the projects that are best suit them and their property. They can use any capital provider that they choose, and then they apply to the program. And so there is an underlying loan agreement between the owner of the building and their PACE lender and their consenting mortgage lender, if there is one. And in that agreement, the interest rates are set, the terms of the loan are set, and that is a traditional underlying loan agreement that the government is not involved in. What sits on top of that traditional loan agreement are a PACE contract between the owner and the local government, a lender contract between the lender and the local government, and then there is a notice that is filed in the property record so everyone will know that there is a PACE lien on this property. In order to qualify, our underwriting criteria have to be met, and that includes that the savings exceed the cost, as well as our technical requirements that are overseen by an independent third-party engineer to ensure that what the property owner is hearing from the contractor, the architect, and the engineer are valid savings. And that's important because the lenders are also relying on those projected savings to pay for the installments to the project. So this model program that all the local governments in that map you just saw are following, we call it PACE in a Box because it is a plug and play program. It is a toolkit that includes the documents, best practices in administration, in underwriting, and in technical standards. This is a uniform program. It's user-friendly, it's scalable, and it's sustainable. We keep the administrative costs as low as possible, committing to continue to lower them as the program scales up, because the model we're using is a high volume of projects so we can keep the costs lower. And we administer this in a transparent manner, leaving to the private sector to find the highest and best use of the program, which is why we want all aspects of the local community, whether it's contracting, engineering, lending, and property owners to all enjoy the benefits of this new economy we're trying to create. When you think about it, probably the last untapped market for the Texas economy is deferred maintenance. So if we can help owners overcome the barriers to addressing their deferred maintenance, we're going to create all kinds of work on these buildings as they're brought back to life. So from the local government's perspective, we've addressed the financial risk and the fiduciary risk. There are no taxpayer dollars used. There's no risk to the Treasury. This is defined in the statute as a governmental function, which means governmental immunity applies. The statute even provides personal immunity. And this was designed for the nonprofit to take on the workload. So there is no impact on local government staff. From a fiduciary perspective, we know local governments need to know that these projects are going to work and that they're going to be successful, and that the local business community and nonprofit community are asking for it. This program has best practices in consumer protection, in the technical standards, the underwriting standards, and in the manner in which it's administrated. And then finally, we've ensured that the local government is not offering services that compete with the private sector. That's one of the things we learned when we went out into the country to get best practices. When we were building PACE in a Box, we learned that in some states, the local PACE administrator is the lender. And we learned that the local PACE administrator in other states does all the engineering in-house, and we felt that we wanted those jobs and that economic opportunity to happen in the local government, in the local community. And then finally, if somebody misses a payment and the local government enforces that missed payment in the same manner as back taxes, all of the local government's costs are covered, and the local government is entitled to attorney's fees, penalties, and interest in the same manner as if when someone defaults on their taxes, and only the missed payments are collected. So if there's a local government interested in creating this program, These are the 4 steps of the statute. And again, the PACE in a Box has all documents ready to go so that they remain uniform and they include best practices. The first thing is a report on how the program will work that gets posted on the website of the local government. The second is passing a resolution of intent, which recognizes that report and sets a public hearing date so that the public can see what's happening and comment on it. The third step is to hold that public hearing. And the fourth step is to adopt the resolution establishing the program. So the minimum number of elected official meetings needed to create the program is 2, with the first 2 requirements happening in the first meeting and the second 2 requirements happening on the second meeting. You can spread it out if you choose, but most local governments now, that especially since there are so many other cities and counties with the program, it's easier to just pick up the phone and speak with a colleague about their experience. And so these programs are being adopted a little faster than they were in the beginning when we were talking in theory about a great idea. Now it's proved. Now we're in the process of proving the model. And one of our best projects is the Plaza Pioneer Park Hotel in El Paso. Again, a beautiful historic building that's been empty for 25 years. Not everybody knows that Mr. Hilton was from El Paso, so this was the first Hilton high-rise. The heir to the Hilton fortune was married to Elizabeth Taylor for about 8 seconds, and so she lived here for a while. So it's just a beautiful property, but the fact that it's been empty for the last 25 years has been heartbreaking for the city, but that is no longer the case. So in the capital stack used to purchase this building and renovate it, there is $9 million in a long-term PACE loan. The annual savings to the hotel are estimated to be $254,000. You can see the impact of both the electricity savings and the water savings. And then for El Paso, the CO2 emissions of over 808 tons will be avoided. But here's the key economic measure for the city of El Paso. When this hotel opens, it will require 161 new full-time permanent jobs. So we're excited about what this project is doing both environmentally and economically for the city of El Paso. PACE also works for nonprofits. Our most recent nonprofit project is a solar project on the New Birth Baptist Church in Fort Worth. But our first PACE project in Texas was HVAC and boilers for a day school with in Congregation Beth Israel in Austin. If you look at the Family Elder Care, this small building, this is a nonprofit that helps the elderly stay in their home as long as possible. They needed a new roof and they added solar, and their monthly electric bill is $5. So think about what that does for a nonprofit, that they trying to have a capital campaign for these kinds of capital expenses. It's extremely difficult. You can't put somebody's name on a boiler. So this takes away that most difficult piece of fundraising, and it allows the nonprofits dollars, fundraising dollars and grants, et cetera, to go to the core mission, which is why they're there. So, and the last one I wanted to share with you is a historic theater in the Cowtown area of Fort Worth, just a dilapidated shell on the inside being brought back to life. So that's a fun entertainment project. Another project from El Paso is the Cielo Vista Mall. So 2.3 million in funding. This is a large indoor mall. And so you can see that they replaced chiller pumps, they optimized their controls. And then this is a really big one for a lot of properties that people don't think about. The exterior parking lot lights and lighting controls. Those exterior parking lot lights, that's a very quick payback item, but has significant impact on the operating expenses. we're excited about this. This was the first post-Harvey housing project along the Gulf. And so they've used a PACE assessment for $4 million for improvements that are going to lower the costs of the tenants of these facilities, as well as the owners in the common space. And you can see some pretty significant annual energy and water saving measures. So I wanted to share with you the whole mixed use idea. But before I do that, if you take a look at this property in the upper right-hand side, you're going to see an old abandoned motor court hotel in East Austin. Housing is so very much in need. And this is low cost in the market. But these 307 hotel rooms are being turned into 307 studio apartments in a much needed area of Austin. And you'll see some significant savings that are, again, going to be enjoyed not only by the owner, but also by the tenants. So if you look at the bottom, you'll see a 1910 mercantile warehouse that takes up an entire block. And it is now 2 Marriott properties. The building is so big, they actually open on different streets. Their front doors are in different streets. It's loft apartments as well as first floor retail. This is the largest project in Texas. The PACE assessment was $24 million. But what I really want to show everyone is the impact of using PACE, not just to renovate a building, but in the capital stack to actually buy the building. So the blue column on the left is how the owner planned to buy this building and underwrite or borrow the money to fix it up as well. So they've got $50 million in EB5 money. They got almost $22 million in historic tax credits. Their equity investment in the building was $22 million. But you'll see that under that green box that they were going to borrow $22 million at 15% because they were short. And so here again, they either have to borrow money, very expensive money, or cut back on the energy and water savings. They chose not to cut back. They found out about PACE and they swapped out the mezzanine loan for $24 million in PACE qualifying measures, in other words, the energy and water savings. And in addition to saving 40% on their energy bill and another 700,000 gallons in water, they dropped their weighted average cost of capital, their interest rate to buy the building by almost 2%. This is what's attracting developers to the PACE program. The smallest project we've done is also in Dallas. So this is a $74,000 solar and LED lighting project on a body shop. And we love this project in the southern portion of Dallas. And you'll see that their electric consumption is dropped by 92%. Again, not every project with PACE has to be huge. This is an office building in downtown Austin. We're seeing a lot of 1980s buildings. The HVAC is shot. So these regular repairs are coming up. So why not use PACE? And what we're seeing is people are marrying the more expensive projects like HVAC and roofing with simple savings like LED lighting or thermostats. And here they added solar as well. This is one of my favorite projects. This is an empty Hager sewing plant in Corsicana. It had been empty for 10 years. People don't wear suits as often as they did before. So this was just sitting empty. The Navarro County Economic Development Director got a call out of the blue from a company in Missouri saying, we're doing site visits. We're moving most of our business to Texas. We make cheerleading uniforms. And you've got an empty sewing plant. It's perfect for our needs. We have PACE in Missouri. If you'll create a PACE program, we'll buy that building. So they did, and they did. And in addition to putting this property back on the tax rolls, 60 new manufacturing jobs were created in Corsicana. This is one of our newer projects from last year. This is in Temple, Texas, and this dangerous eyesore is becoming apartments in downtown Temple, Texas, with 44% electricity savings, again, for both the owner and the tenants. And I just wanted to share one more with you. This is an old brewery on Galveston Island. It is being turned into a hotel, which is right next to the port where the cruise ships come in. And so once COVID is over and this building is ready, it will generate a lot of great business and convenience for the island and for people who are coming onto the island to hop on a cruise ship for a couple days. So it's been fun to help with this economic development as well. So the bottom line is PACE is a win-win-win. Property owners win, contractors have new work and replacement work instead of just repairs. Lenders have a new opportunity to serve customers who haven't been able to afford to take care of their buildings and take care of their collateral. These are very safe loans. Communities benefit indirectly from economic development, energy and water savings, building stock is improved, and just more attractive for people moving into Texas and into your area. And then finally, you know, we talk about peak demand all the time, and the heat where you are is pretty significant. And in Texas, power costs a lot more on a July afternoon than it does on a December morning. And so if these technologies can help an organization reduce their peak demand, they're going to have a significant impact on grid reliability as well as their own bills. And so there is a lot of opportunity for this program to help local governments, state government meet our goals for reliable, affordable power and water. And then finally, sort of the opposite in the winter storm, but the same argument. And so the other thing that I think we're going to see is if the federal government is going to have higher expectations from our business community, at least with PACE, there's a way to pay for that. So we hope to serve your communities in a whole host of ways. And so I'm going to shop. So here is our contact information. We will make these slides available to you, as well as a link to the video once we get everything downloaded. And so you'll have a way to contact all of us. Annette and Eddie, thank you for your amazing presentations. It's been delightful to be a part of this discussion. So I'm going to bring us all back online and see if we can't answer questions. Please ask. I tell everybody that at least with PACE, you probably have to hear it 3 times to fully understand what we're doing here and how you can take advantage of it. So I don't see any more questions, but we would love it if you will type some in and let us know what you think. All right, Eddie and Annette, do you have any extra comments or thoughts here before we close down?
Well, thanks to everybody for attending this webinar. I hope you found it beneficial. Please visit our webpage, and if you have specific questions, send me an email, or we can set up a separate meeting. I'd be happy to talk to you about any questions you have.
And Annette, you're muted, but if you'd like to add any last minute comments here as well, that would be great. Okay, please reach out with any thoughts, suggestions, questions that you have. We thank you again for attending. We are very grateful that you're here, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you, everyone.